Guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 10, and I've got your quarterback rankings for this week. Now, these rankings are for this week only. They're not rest of season rankings. There is things that we have to consider for these rankings. For this week, there is a major injury that is kind of hovering over everything. If you are looking for your start sit questions, this is the video that you want to go to. If you want to say, I have these two quarterbacks, which one should I start? I'm assuming you have one that's in the top 12. Start the one that I have ranked higher, and let's go.
He's a legend.
At the top of the list this week, and pretty much every week this season, is Josh Allen. However, he is being evaluated for what could be a UCL injury. That's a Tommy John injury. That could mean that he's out 2 weeks, could mean he's out 6 weeks, could mean he's out for the entire year, possibly a full calendar year of recovery, depending on the severity of the injury that he suffered. So right now, I have to rank him based on the possibility that he is fine and is going to play. We'll know more as the week goes along here. Obviously, if he is going to miss time, he goes out of this list completely off, and we move everybody up one. Hopefully, Josh Allen is just fine. He's the anchor of many people's first place teams right now, averaging 29.7 fantasy points per game. Hopefully, he's doing well. That's all. I don't want him to be out for the entire year. That would absolutely suck on so many different levels. Jalen Hurts is the QB2 for week 10, 25.4 fantasy points per week. He's been outstanding, coming off of another 20-plus point performance, 28.4 in week 8, 16.9 only in week 6, 27. Like, he's got another great matchup. Every week's a great matchup. When you have the wide receiving core that he has, the offensive line, the rushing floor, which, like, we haven't seen him have to run the last 3 weeks, and he still had over 20 fantasy points in 2 of the 3 of those games. This is a great spot for Jalen Hurts to excel. Hopefully we get that rushing floor back, because we know what he can do. Multiple passing touchdowns through the air the past 3 games with a ceiling of 4 against Pittsburgh. Hopefully he doesn't have to rely on that. Gives us that easier game where he runs for like 60 yards, probably has that half a touchdown potential on the ground every time that he takes the field, and we just roll. On to Patrick Mahomes at number 3, coming off of a ridiculous game where they ran like 8,000 plays against Tennessee. I think they had like 91 or 95, whatever they had. He threw the ball 68 times. They had to ice his arm after this game. Like, he threw like MLB starter level amounts of pitches, 38.1 fantasy points, 30.1 the game before, up to 27.7 on the year. I'm not expecting he's going to have to throw it 70 times again against Jacksonville this week, but the efficiency could certainly be there. We know what he can do with his legs. He's a mobile quarterback, not a running quarterback. Way better than pocket plus, 63 rushing yards and a touchdown also in that game against Tennessee. Tua Tagovailoa just does the same thing every single week, which is throw the ball to Tyreek Hill, and then if Tyreek's covered, throw the ball to Jalen Waddle, and it's been a recipe for massive success. 21.2 fantasy points per game on the season, but the last 2 games, 27.1 fantasy points against Chicago on the road, and 32 points on the road against Detroit. He goes home to square off against Cleveland in this one. Just another spot where nobody can cover Tyreek and nobody can cover Jalen Waddle, and Coach McDaniel does a fantastic job of scheming them into open spots. 3 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games for Tua. No signs of slowing down. Speaking of no signs of slowing down, at number 5, I have Justin Fields. We had him at 12 last week. I'm moving him all the way up to 5. He has been the QB1 overall in fantasy football the last 5 weeks. He's been absolutely outstanding. 45.7 points last game, 26 against Dallas, 24.3 against New England, 19 and 17 the 2 weeks before that. And that week 5 game, the one where he had 17, he could have had 30-ish because there was a 60-yard touchdown run called back in that game. His efficiency has really climbed. We saw 3 touchdowns through the air from him last week on 60%, 61% completion rate, and 2 touchdowns the week before against Dallas on 74% completion rate. The best part for us in fantasy is the fact that he is a running quarterback. The categories that I use for quarterback: statue, pocket plus, mobile, running quarterback. Right now, he's a running quarterback, partially because they just don't have the offensive line or the weapons, really, for him to throw it a lot. Like, they cap him out at 25, 28 attempts per game. They don't have the outside threats. Darnell Mooney is at best profiles as like a wide receiver 3, could be like in a few years a wide receiver 2, but he's definitely not an alpha. And they have a horrible offensive line in terms of pass blocking win rate, which just puts him in a bad spot every single week that he just can't throw. But like, they've adapted and said, you know, we just have to call designed runs for him. We have to let him scramble. We have to put him in spots where he can win with his skill set. And they've done that. 15 rushing attempts in week 9, 8 in week 8, 14 in week 7, 12 in week 6, 8 in week 5. That is what we want as fantasy managers, right? You want that running back at quarterback that gives you this ridiculous floor with their legs. He's basically getting you something like 10, 11, 12 points per game on the ground. And then whatever he gets through the air is this, like this, the running game gives him that massive cushion. It's kind of like Jalen Hurts was last year when they weren't really throwing the ball a lot and he was relying on his legs and the offense was built around him running. That's where the Chicago Bears are built right now. They want to run it 40 to 45 times a game. They know that their defense is not there. So they want to limit the amount of opportunities that the opposing team has offensively, which leads to them running the ball an absolute metric ton. Perfect for us if you drafted Justin Fields late in drafts. I need to see that more out of Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler's had 2 good games in a row, 29.6 points against Minnesota, 20 points against Seattle. Both games they lost. Now he goes to Los Angeles to play the Rams, a defense that can put a lot of pressure on him. Hopefully they do a good job moving the pocket for him. What I've liked that I've seen out of Kyler the last month, the last 4 games that they've played, 8 rushing attempts, 6 rushing attempts, 7 rushing attempts, 10 rushing attempts. That is the Kyler Murray that we need as fantasy managers. We need that Kyler, because that Kyler leads to like the multiple touchdown games through the air, 2 touchdown throws against Seattle, 3 against Minnesota. That's what we need. We don't want to return to the 5 rush attempts, 2 rush attempts that they ran him the first 3 games. In week 3 against the Rams, he put up 16.3 fantasy points, threw no touchdowns, ran for no touchdowns, only ran it 2 times. They scored 12 real life points. That ain't going to cut it. You got to open it up. Now, maybe the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is back, a true alpha where Hollywood Brown profiles better as a number 2 option. Now, we still don't have Hollywood Brown. Obviously, he's not back yet from injury. But that has opened up this offense a lot with Kyler completing over 70% of his passes in the last 2 games and 69% against New Orleans. So the 3 games that Nuke has been back, his efficiency has climbed as a passer. And maybe they're running more as a result of that being the case. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but they did run it 10 times with him in week 6 against Seattle. Kyler needs to run. Let him scramble. Please, Cliffy, just let him run. Now, the first guy that isn't a running quarterback on this list, and like I may be a little higher. I'm higher than the field, most definitely, on Kirk Cousins. I think that this team is fantastic. Obviously, they're winning a lot of their games. Kirk Cousins is doing well, but not like amazing, right? He's in week 9, he's got 13 touchdown passes. We need to see that climb. However, multiple touchdown passes in each of the last 3. I believe that the 300-yard games are coming. It would be his first of the season if they can get there. The problem has been kind of the decline of Adam Thielen and the fact that KJ Osborne is really just kind of a guy. He's not a separator, but they did add TJ Hawkinson to this team, and I think that they need a complement. They really do. They need a very viable complement to Justin Jefferson, who is an all-world wide receiver, unquestionably top 3 in the league, maybe one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league at wide receiver in terms of talent, separation ability, and just understanding and know-how, right? And he is playing at an extremely high level, but Kirk Cousins needs that secondary guy. They pushed Hawkinson right into the works. He may be that guy. In the offseason, they have to get somebody to complement JJ on the other side outside the hashes. But for this season, I think that Hawkinson might be the guy that makes everything fall into place. We thought that Irv Smith might be that guy, but he just isn't, right? He's kind of cosplaying as that guy. TJ Hawkinson can be that guy. Really high profile, really high pedigree as a tight end prospect, and might actually realize that 6.5 over under of targets every single week the rest of the year, which would greatly boost Kirk Cousins' ability to post his first 300-yard game of the year, as well as continued multiple touchdowns. So I'm higher on Kirk Cousins in the field because of, 1, the acquisition of TJ Hawkinson, and 2, how they utilized him last week. So JJ finally has a complement that has not been there all season, and that greatly benefits Kirk Cousins, as now Thielen may be the third guy on the list, and KJ Osborne slides to fourth in terms of target market share. Now that tree looks a lot better. Behind Kirk Cousins at number 8, I have Geno Smith. Now, he's had just a really good year. There's no slighting Geno Smith. I just don't know what the ceiling is based on how this team is constructed. He's got a really good floor, partially because you guys who've been watching me for years know at this point, my philosophy on quarterbacks is that an average to above average quarterback, just good quarterback play, right? Doesn't have to be amazing or great quarterback play. Good quarterback play is complemented by having amazing wide receivers. The wide receivers can be a massive elevator of quarterback efficiency and talent. So when you have a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, it can make a Geno Smith look really, really good. And he has looked good. 19.4 fantasy points per game, 15 touchdowns through the first 9 weeks of the season. But like, he's got one game, and it was against Detroit when they scored like almost 100 real life points in that game, where he had over 24 fantasy points. So he's basically going to get you probably between 15 and 22 on most weeks, which is good. He's a good floor, but the opportunities for a ceiling just don't seem to be there. Like everybody has an opportunity for a ceiling above him. They do play against Tampa Bay. They do want to run the ball, and they've been doing good at it with Ken Walker since he took over the job in the absence of Penny, which has kind of helped Geno, I guess, because now he's getting one-on-one opportunities on the outside. For him to really go nuclear, it would be tough against Tampa Bay. We'll see how it goes, but I do have him ahead of Justin Herbert this week. Now, Herbert is a much more talented quarterback than Geno. Herbert goes up against one of the best defenses in the league, and it remains to be seen if they're going to get Keenan Allen back. So like, this is the other side of the quarterbacks need wide receivers argument that I just made with Geno Smith and Kirk Cousins. Justin Herbert doesn't have Mike Williams. Justin Herbert has been playing without Keenan Allen this entire season, and it has turned Justin Herbert, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in terms of talent in the league right now in 2022, into somebody who cannot challenge downfield, into somebody that can't throw people open. It's not his fault. It's just when you're throwing to Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter instead of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, it greatly diminishes your efficiency and greatly diminishes your ability to have these ceiling games. He has not thrown a 3 touchdown game since week 2. He may have to this week and be forced into it if San Francisco starts running away from it and he gets forced into like 50 plus attempts, and they can be somewhat efficient against this really, really tough San Francisco defense. But like, another game where he throws for the middle 200s and 1 to 2 touchdown passes seems most likely in this spot, averaging 18.3 fantasy points on the year. Please get healthy players back around him in the passing game so he doesn't have to just dink and dunk his way to Austin Eckler, Palmer, Gerald Everett, and DeAndre Carter. Like, look what they've done to my beautiful boy. I hate it. They've massacred him. Dak Prescott slides in at number 10 against Green Bay. They have not been very good defensively. We're going to find out. We don't know if Ezekiel Elliott's going to play in this game or not. Only one target went to Tony Pollard in the last game without Ezekiel. I think that changes moving forward. Obviously, they were playing from ahead in that game, and they just kind of grounded out. Dak is just kind of there. Against Chicago, 26 fantasy points, but against Detroit, only 12. He's going to be an up and down guy. They don't have enough around him. Same argument, right? CeeDee Lamb is fine. Schultz has been injured. They're relying too much on the tight ends, right? The Hendershot and Ferguson, and in the absence of Schultz not being there all the time, they don't have consistent play on the other side of CeeDee Lamb. Hopefully, if they do get out there and sign OBJ, the next few games will look a lot better for Dak Prescott, but I can't rank him higher than 10 right now. Right behind him, Trevor Lawrence in a pace up spot in a place where they should be throwing the ball over expectations. He's got good enough wide receivers to make it work against the Kansas City defense that's going to force them to drop back and throw. So I'm expecting closer to like 40 to 45 attempts. Obviously, passing attempts do not directly correlate with quarterback scoring efficiency does, but Trevor Lawrence been pretty efficient. He's seen games where he's completed 91% of his passes, 81% of his passes, 75% of his passes, but he's been a yo-yo. He's been up and down. We've also seen him complete like 50% of his passes against tougher defenses, defenses like Denver, the Broncos, who have really great cornerbacks and were really good defensively before they traded everybody away, and the New York Giants, who have been locked down defensively as well against specifically younger quarterbacks. So no double-digit touchdown games. No multiple touchdown games since week 4 against Philadelphia. A very tough defense in their own right. Only put up 10 points that week against the Chargers. 3 touchdowns. This is way back in week 3. 25 fantasy points. 25 fantasy points against Indy, a bad defense. And 17.7 last week against Las Vegas. They have recentered their offense around giving Travis Etienne like Derrick Henry type usage. I don't think that that's going to be viable this week. I'm predicting, and so is basically everybody else, that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be playing from ahead in this game. Obviously, they'll script the first drive if the Jaguars score early, fine. But Kansas City should be playing from ahead for over half the snaps in this game, which means that Trevor Lawrence is going to be in situations where he's going to have to throw, and Kansas City has given up a lot of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this year. Could be an arrow up spot for this offense, specifically for fantasy, even in a game that they should lose. And like rounding out, this is sad. Rounding out the 12, Tom Brady going against Seattle. Has not been a good defense. We have targeted Seattle all season long. Tampa Bay offense has just not been good. Like the malpractice of Byron Leftwich saying, well, you know, if we can't run play action if we don't run the ball effectively. No, you really can. Well, tons of studies have shown that like it's the threat of running the ball, not actually being able to run the ball, that makes play action work. So like they're ass backwards from the top down, and it's really trickled down to the sense that this offense, behind a bad offensive line this year, way worse than they've had the last few seasons, has really reflected on what they can do offensively. Tom Brady has thrown multiple touchdowns in one game this season, averaging 16.6 fantasy points per game. This should be a very soft landing spot, and maybe they can build on that game-winning drive against the Los Angeles Rams in week 9 to get some positive energy going. Maybe he can get his chakras right. Perhaps Giselle has lifted the curse against Tom Brady for this week's game against Seattle. They're at home. They play a defense that does not do a good job at stopping the things that Tampa Bay can do. I'm going to predict a multiple touchdown game here for Tom Brady. I think this is the week that it has to bounce for him. A lot of things going their way after that drive last week. 20 points could be incoming here. I have to have him in my top 12. And I wish you the best of luck in your matchups this week. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.